Hi, everyone. My name is Tim Vanderhook. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Viant. And today we're here to talk about identity resolution in a programmatic world. To start this, I just want to talk about why are we here today? Where we find ourselves. So far in 2020, we know in Safari cookies don't work. They've deleted that a few years ago. And in Chrome, they've announced that cookie deletion will happen at some point in 2022. And we also know that Apple's made big announcements in limiting IDFA and email tracking going forward in the name of consumer privacy. So for programmatic advertising, where does this leave ourselves? And this is where today I want to start by defining what identity resolution is. Identity resolution is a really critical process in the programmatic ad world moving forward. This is the process of resolving data back to an individual or a household by matching personal identifiers like your email address, your name, your physical address, a phone number. These are descriptions of personal identifiers. By matching these up to digital identifiers, what was a cookie, a device ID, an IP address, a location point, those are the digital identifiers that we see flow through that real-time bidding and programmatic ecosystem. And this can happen across devices and channels. And what's important here is that we're focused on identity resolution, about addressable advertising, understanding who we're delivering an ad to. This is very different than device resolution, which is just that replacement for the cookie, another anonymous identifier in replacement of that cookie. Today, we're focused really on identity. What does identity data look like? It looks like your first name, your last name, your email address, phone number, or a physical address. The first thing we do in this process is we need to separate what's an individual identifier and what's a household identifier. So you see on the right side, we've moved that physical address to a household identifier. But we also have your first name and last name there because people belong to a household. When it comes to individual identifiers, you have the first name and last name, email address, and phone number. All of these are individual identifiers that don't belong to a household, but a person. And when you think of a hierarchical structure, identity resolution really starts at the top. It's the household. People belong to households. That first name and last name at the address is the household identifier. And then below that, you have an individual identifier, which is the same name, an email address, a phone number. And I want you to remember that household identifier because it's important in this process as we move forward, as some of these other identifiers like cookies go away. Let's look at real world data. This is an example of Lily Evans, and she lives at this address in Los Angeles. Here's an email address and a phone number that belong her. It's not enough that we just have these personal identifiers. We need a means to make it actionable. So I have this first party customer data as a marketer. How do I make it actionable and attach it to another data company where I can learn more about my customers, or attach it from a media company to deliver addressable advertising? This is where the first part of this process is critical. It's about making sure the consumer's privacy is paramount, and we hash these and encrypt them. What does that turn into? It turns into a code that is unique to that email address or unique to that physical address, but doesn't actually identify the individual user. This hashing process is a critical first step. And now once we're here with these hashes, you can then take these to a partner and say, do you have the same hash in your database or the same email address? So hashing, hosting, and then matching to data partners are the critical steps when it comes to this, both at the household level and at the individual identifier level. And once you have all this identity data hashed, you then can start to attach device identifiers to it. At Viant, in 2015, we did our first people-based match with Experian, where we took email addresses, hashed them, and matched them, and we could exchange data back and forth between both companies, not using a cookie sync table. And this was game-changing at the time. That was the first identity direct match table back then between the two of us, and we've been able to continually build on that initial email match. So the question comes today, can a cookie equal an email address? If you think of the IAB rearc, if you think of Trade Desk has launched some other opportunities in 2.0 around using email as an identifier to replace the cookie. What's important to note when it comes to identity resolution, an email is very different than a cookie. They're not the same. A cookie is an anonymous identifier that really represents a device or a browser on that device. It doesn't transfer to the actual person behind that device who may walk in the store and buy the marketer's product. So is a cookie and an email the same? No, they're different. A cookie's night, an email's day. What an email gives you is the ability to go beyond the anonymous identifiers and actually link to in-store sales, measurement of your in-store sales and your e-commerce sales channel. It does much, much more than a cookie ever did. A cookie was great at recognizing this device an ad, and that device later purchased a product. But it didn't go off the device to the person and then allow you to measure that consumer's response across many channels and touch points that you have. So a cookie doesn't replace, it can't just be replaced with an email as a cookie identifier. The email as an important personal identifier gives you much more capability. What does all this mean to be people-based in today's world? It means that you can learn from your data-driven marketing campaigns at a much faster pace. So let's look at this. Your ad server logs come through. You have digital ad impressions. You have email addresses you've collected. Website visitors have come. All of these are individuals from the smartphone or the tablet device. All of these are individual touch points that you've had with this one consumer here. However, when we talk about the importance of the household at the very beginning, why is the household important? And it's because of the rise of connected television. Television is generally the way that most media plans are led, and we lead TV first, and the other ones are complementary. In a television world, we know that's not an individual device. It's a shared device of more than one people in the household watching that device at once. And so one ad exposure on a TV is not an ad exposure to one individual. It can actually reach more than one individual. And this household identifier is really critical now that connected television is here and of so much importance. And we're able to link household exposures, map those to individual exposures, and tell a much broader story of that customer journey on how we expose them, how we engage them, and how we move them through the sales funnel. But most importantly, we can measure that entire return on ad spend that marketers are looking for. So that's all I have for you today. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope you learned something in this chat.